Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. And I'm so glad to have my friend Adam Walls here. We've talked many times over the last 2 or 3 years about things of great depth and curiosity, and I'm looking forward to seeing where our conversation goes today. So, welcome, Adam. So,
Thank you.
so
Nice to
what's
be here.
up? What's up with you?
Uh, so for the past, what are we in June, 6 months, I've been working with a good friend of mine called Neville Atkins on something that we've called Zeequal, which is ZQL. And ZQL is a query language that we wrote to answer the question, how do I federate my data? And I don't mean that in a Palantir kind of fake federation. I mean, really, if I just wanted to leave my data where it was, not move it anywhere, and just ask it questions and get answers back, how would I do that? And the current fashion since the mid 90s has been to think about putting all your data together into a cloud. Um, and really, there's two cloud providers, and they've cornered the market, and it's all very corporate and expensive and hazardous. And and so we started with the problem of something called CPQ, which is how do you configure, price, and quote if you have products across many different databases. And I was talking to a colleague of mine who was having this problem, and they'd implemented Salesforce CPQ, and it was horribly complex. And basically, you have to wire up all the different deals with different configurations, and it's all hardwired. And we thought, well, it would be much easier if you could just go to your products and pull them when you need them, and your product catalog sits here, and you can just go to it. And you can say, well, I want to charge that, and create orders. But the way to do that would be so the way that the reason they can't do that is because everything is sucked into these clouds. And then we started thinking about, okay, so if your data is in France for the French sales team, and the Spanish sales team have one in Spain, and the French team leave a blank field when they have a particular type of customer, and it means something local to them, and the Spanish team have a different field but leave blank for a particular type of customer. When you roll that into a cloud under a column called customer, you lose that definition and that ability to define at a very low level, and it becomes kind of superficial. And Neville said, well, that's called flattening. I thought, okay, that's what flattening means. You flatten your data to make it kind of two-dimensional, really. And and then we started thinking about, well, what are the consequences of that? Well, the consequences of that are that your schema in your cloud is what we would call an abstraction. Um, it's an expected state for your data. Whereas where the local databases are, that's your actual data. So I call those witness databases. It's where it's witnessed the event, or database of record, I think we used to call them. And so you start moving this data into clouds, and it starts to flatten, and you start to lose definition of this data. And then you stick AI over the top. And what AI does is, even if you did manage to move the empty fields with the data and keep the relevance in the cloud, AI will probably look at that and go, oh, what you really meant to do, and fill it with something. And then you have the problem of AI then looking at that data and saying, well, that's truth. And then it then creates more data based on this thing that used to be true and now isn't. So this idea that your data would decay just by moving it into a cloud. So not only does moving it into a cloud flatten it, but then over time it would get worse. And what AI will do is accelerate that. And so from there we got to the idea that you have reality, and the closest to reality is these witness databases. And then you have your data, and your data is diverging from reality, and what the gap we decided to call the delta. There's a delta between reality and your data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my friend Neville created Zeequal, and Zeequal is this language that we can use to send a single query through the integration layer, which will then translate it into SQL and send it out to the databases in their own dialect and get the answers back. So we can say, for example, what type of customers do we have in France? What type of customers do we have in Spain? And we can pull those back together and get onto a single interface. And we can do that on a browser, an internet browser, HTML. And all the logic is in the browser itself. So we don't even have infrastructure. Once you can do this, you realize that actually you don't need anything. You don't need clouds. You don't need data centers. You just send the query, which is very tiny, get the answer back, which is very tiny, and present it on the dashboard, on the interface, or a dashboard. And then suddenly you can give people what they want, which is access to the data that they want to see when they want to see it, in the format that they want to see it. So it answers the right data, right place to the right person with the right skills in the right format. And it's instant because it's only a little tiny thing that you're passing backwards and forwards. So you don't have any of the problems that you have with the current way of thinking. So we looked into this, and it turns out IBM were doing this back in the 90s, but they didn't have the compute. They were actually doing federation, but their idea was that all your databases would look like one database by federating them together. But they didn't have the compute power, which is why we ended up moving data into big databases. And then big data came along and said, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could put all your data together and you could tell stuff? And so they kind of took the wrong turn. And we ended up in this cul-de-sac where we are now, where data is kept prisoner in these databases. And we were thinking about things like, the ontology wars, when you actually set up your cloud, the time that you spend discussing what is a customer and trying to find a definition of customer that makes everybody happy. And this is still going on today. There's a huge amount of waste that happens in doing these activities. And so we built some products. We're a bit early. Nobody's quite ready for it because they're still in the paradigm of, clouds and things. They've invested in clouds. And so we've kind of got all these solutions for that stuff. And when for example, France at the moment are going through, they want to have data sovereignty. And they want all their data back from the American providers, the usual suspects, as we call them. And they want to get rid of Microsoft and have Linux, and they want to have their own. They don't want Palantir, for example. My latest understanding, they don't want Palantir. And so we kind of have an answer for that, but we don't really know anybody in France to talk to about that. But that's where we're at with what we're calling A to Zeequal.
That's fascinating.
And yeah.
And do any of the big players know about this?
No, they don't. No, they don't, because they will steal it. The funny thing is, it's actually, once you understand it, it's not that hard to do. It's just you have to change the way that you think about these things. And obviously, we've done quite a lot of work, Neville and I, to get it to a point where it is now. So none of this is AI. This is not, this is all deterministic. It's not, we're not using AI to do any of this stuff, apart from maybe create the interfaces if we want. At the same time, and as a parallel, I was looking at rules and how we create some rules around this. So one of the things I was looking at was an X-ray, where I can gather open source intelligence on any subject, any person, any company, any team, any public team, all the way up to sector, and then looking at ways of putting that through a diagnostic model to tell me something very interesting about all the open source intelligence. And I'm now using that as a consultancy tool.
Hmm.
So if you take what IT consultancies do, which is to define all the IT for an organization, if I want the business view of that thing that they've done, what I'll do is I'll start from the outside, get a picture of the organization from space, given all the open source intelligence. And that's also things like the leadership speeches. And we can look at the language they use and whether or not they're using consistent language. And look at the conflicts within those speeches to tell us something about the inner workings of the organization, all the way down to Trustpilot and Glassdoor for the customers and the employees' comments about the organization. We found some interesting things. For example, I don't know whether you know this, but the more employees think of the company that they work for, the less the customers think of the company, and vice versa. If customers really like it, the employees generally don't, which I found fascinating, and I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but it seems to stack up. But anyway, all these things tell us stuff. And what I've been able to do is I've been able to use some of the work that I've done around viable systems model to model all of these responses into a pattern of how the system works. And based on that, I can then model pathologies within that organization. We've got 32 different pathologies we've defined. And the pathologies then create their own patterns, which I'm now starting to see create new understanding. So I've called something capability harvesting, for example, that I've been writing about recently.
Yeah, I saw that.
Sorry, capacity. I've messed up. It's capacity harvesting,
Capacity.
and the idea. This is based on a law that I wrote, which was that if you measure human activity, you consume the thing that you're measuring. The measure consumes the thing it's measuring. And this is why the NHS is in such a mess, because we have so many measures on it, and all those measures are consuming the capacity of the thing itself. And so with that in mind, we can then start to model the harvesting of capacity coming out of organizations. So, and this started with an organization that I looked at recently. The numbers were brilliant, but the employees were very almost distressed. And I started to look at how would you see that from space, from the outside. You know, the board, if you like, focused on cost savings, even though they're hitting record profits. They're still trying to extract as much out of the organization as possible and turn it into cash, while the employees are crying out for investment. And I was actually speaking to Karen Lord today about this, and she called it chaotic inertia, and said there's an oscillation that's set up as organizations start to extract more and more and more, and they get to a peak where their numbers are absolutely optimal, but it's all downhill after that. And you get this oscillation effect that starts and signals are, for example, everybody's really, really busy, but nothing's getting done. So everybody's full of in meetings all the time, but nothing's happening. There's no progress. It's like an inertia that happens because there is no capacity left in the organization to achieve anything.
Not to interrupt, but because this is fascinating, but you're describing something that I have seen for a very long time, at least 30 years, if not longer. And it poses the question in my mind. You said, let me back up and come at it this way. I want to suggest to you that this technical let's call it an image that you've put together of what is going on, is actually a function of the failure of human thought. Because the failure of human imagination. Because you're describing something that I see, which is the organization working at cross purposes to its people and to its customers, and that what they what they want to achieve is the numbers which result in higher payout to the executive level.
I,
And
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. In fact, this is the next sequence that I've landed on, which is I've penned another law. I mean, I write these laws. The law, the Walls Law, as I've called it, because I'm slightly narcissistic, was that measurement of human activity consumes capacity of the thing it's measuring. There's another one called Apex Law, which is any number at the top of an organization consumes the organization. So it consumes the capacity of the organization as in its entirety. So as an organization is measured on ARR or NRR, whatever it is, these things consume the organization, that things don't get done because they're not going to alter that. And the assumption is that if that goes up, I get paid more, or the investors will be happy and they'll put more money in, or it'll be worth a bigger multiplicand of something or other. These mathematical tricks that they do to financially model things, and it has no relevance in how the organization actually functions. It's an abstraction, and as my good friend Alan Rayner would say, you cannot recreate reality from an abstraction.
okay, I accept that. And you're describing what I see. I think this goes back to Bretton Woods in the 1970s, when how money was conceived was changed. And it was no longer a hard thing. It became a an imaginary thing.
Mm.
And
Or money is debt, that sort of thing where money is debt. If money is created, a debt is created.
yes, but yeah, what you're creating doesn't exist.
No, no, it's not. You're right. It's not real.
And then after Bretton Woods, you had the advent of Welchism, Jack Welch, who wanted
Yeah.
to monetize or commoditize every facet of GE, and and he trained all his people who then were hired to be the the CEOs of a host of other organizations, which took the Welch mandate and did the same, and
Mm.
and uh, and that it has brought us to today where um, the globalist mandate to digitize everything and which was all about uh, narrowing the capacity to extract value or wealth from the system so that only a few would benefit and the rest would be basically serfs or slaves.
So I've identified a pattern um, in the data. I say the data in data that indicates capacity harvesting, and it's the people who are benefiting won't be there to pick up the bill. That's the
Yeah.
first one. The second one is the number becomes the thing. And the third one is the people cannot tell the truth about the number. So when those three things are true, you have capacity harvesting in place. So people are in
Would you say
organizations
those?
right now listening to this.
Would you
Yeah,
say those three things again?
right. So the person who the person or people who are benefiting will not be around to pick up the bill. So generally that's senior teams who have a 3 to 5 year tenure. They
Hmm.
come in with a 3 to 5 year plan to efficiency, cost savings, drive. They'll be talking about driving things and
Okay.
that sort of language. The number becomes a thing. So there'll be a series of numbers that they quote as being the thing, what matters, and they'll have acronyms like NRR or ARR, which is average revenue retention, or net revenue retention, or something like this, and that will be to appease the investors. And then the third one, the killer, is that people cannot tell the truth about the number. So if they tell the truth about the number, they're in trouble. So to counter this, I wrote an evidence standard for boards, knowing that I can now federate, knowing that I can now get data directly from a company's systems and present it to anybody in the organization that needs it. I mapped an evidence standard for a board pack. So what I did was I looked at all the board packs and I worked out, they basically answering 6 questions. And 2 obvious ones are we making money? And can I trust the information I'm looking at? Can I trust the data I'm looking at? There's other ones like, do we have the people and things like that? But do you have the processes? Now, I found places in the organization that you can get data to tell you those things. And I can federate to those things. So I could present a dashboard to a board, which is truth. Now, at the moment, what happens is the board have a board pack, which is created by management. And management generally turn reds into ambers and ambers into greens because they don't like to give bad news to the board. Well, if the board get accurate numbers, then they have a fiduciary responsibility to publish those numbers. So they won't be able to say, we didn't know. When people say, well, why did you claim your bonus right up to the point that you went bust? We didn't know that the numbers weren't accurate, they were hidden, or somebody changed them. Whereas if I gave you a dashboard as a member of the board and you just press refresh and it uploaded immediately with your fresh numbers that were truth, that would deal with the third one, which is nobody wants to tell the truth. Now, the number being the thing is the difficult one, because the number being the thing it's embedded in MBAs, it's embedded in this measurement culture, database decision making and all that rubbish. It's such a hard coded paradigm, and yet if I say to people, every number in your business is a lie, I'll get people who don't believe me, and they treat that statement with contempt.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, every number in your business is created by somebody who is incentivized to make it a 4, not a 5. So every single number in your business has been created by somebody to answer a question that makes them money or incentivized in some way. So all those numbers have been messed around with. Now, the reason that every number is a lie is because you can't measure business. Because every measure in business influences the thing it's measuring and therefore fails basic measurement system analysis. Any measure that influences the thing it's measuring is poor measure. So we know that, right?
And
So therefore,
this is quantum physics.
you're the second person to tell me that today. Actually, it's just measurement system analysis, but it's also, the observer observes and then the
Yeah.
thing changes.
Yeah.
But also, every measure that influences the thing it's measuring is not a measure, it's an influencer. It's obvious, right? So therefore, there isn't a measure that you can place on business that doesn't influence the business. Therefore, there are no measures in business that matter. They're all lies. Now, in IT, you can have all the measures you like because it's real. It's boxes and wires, and effectively, even if it's clouds, how fast your data moves or how many bits of data you've got, you're talking about things. They don't care if you measure them, and therefore you're not influencing anything. This is why I say that IT is science and business is religion, because as Descartes said in 1622, if it can be measured, it's science. If it can't be measured, it's religion. I'm saying business can't be measured, and therefore it's religion. This is why IT can't talk to business, and they need people like me who sit there and say, well, what these guys actually mean is.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, one of what I'm doing right now is I'm writing documents for IT people to present to business because they speak IT and business speak business. And that means framing them in a much more, I call it human speak, taking it from the technical to the human and saying, if you do this, it'll be cool because you'll be able to do these things. Rather than this and this mixed with this, create this. That's an abstract for a business person. So if business can't be measured, then the apex measure is true. If I'm right, then anybody who places a measure on a business and is influencing the business to hit that measure is screwing your business up, is consuming the business with that measure. And that's why apex law.
I think you're onto something real. This fits squarely with what I've been watching for 30 years. Um, I I saw I'm processing what you're saying right now, using my circle of impact model. And the model has three dimensions of ideas, relationships, and structure. And my conclusion, and those three emerged as patterns of behavior
Mm-hmm.
in across the spectrum of organizations, from the smallest little mom and pop store to the largest global corporation.
Yeah.
And you have values, you have ideas, and people have values and purpose and vision, that thing, and they have some way of talking about impact. That's the measure, impact. What is it that
Mm-hmm.
changes? The relationship is all about respect and trust and mutuality. And when you have that, then you create a vision for impact that becomes the company's. But all of that is secondary to the structure of the organization. And the
Of course.
structure is immune to change. And therefore the problem is, you're always at the people are always at war with their work because they want to do good work. They want to work purposefully. They want their relationships at work to be ones of respect and trust. They want all those things. But the systems do not allow for that because it creates ambiguity and it robs the system of efficiency.
Now, efficiency is a funny word, and it's one of those weird terms that was it's sort of a Jack Welch term, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
This idea that you can have efficiency. Okay, so what's efficiency? When I think of efficiency, I think of an engine, right? And it's so I'll put in a certain amount of fuel and I'll get a certain amount of output. Okay, fine. So it's fuel in for output out. That's efficiency. Okay, what's the fuel of people?
The fuel of people.
Yeah,
Um, Purpose. They
I
are
think it's love.
okay. Well, then I agree with that. Okay, love.
Because if you love your job, it's easy. It's never a work a day in your life if you love your job. If you love what you do, it's like it's a holiday. It's a joy. I love what I do, so therefore I can do it all the time without taking a break. I don't need
Me too.
rest. Don't right. So everybody, I think, is the same. I might be wrong, but
Have you
maybe love isn't enough,
have
but
you
it
heard
seems to be.
my two things that I now kind of I'm tacking up on the wall and saying, okay, these are the non-negotiables. One is that all leadership begins with personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference that matters. That's what leadership is. And everybody can do that. The other is, and this emerged in over the last um, 20 years. But there is a persistent residual culture of values that persists because it resides in the relationships of the people of the
Mm,
organization. And
yeah.
what I have found is that where the company is in trouble, the people are united.
Mm, it's true.
And I saw this. I was working with one extraordinary large multinational manufacturer that will go unnamed. That and I went to meet the people that I was doing these webinars for, and I knew one of the guys, and he took me around, and he took me into the executive office suite of the department of this large company. And I went in, and nobody was in the executive suite. All the SVPs are gone, and nobody was there except for this one um, executive assistant sitting there. And and as we walked down this hallway, like we were in the Ritz-Carlton or the Ritz something, um, she stood up very formally. She was immaculately dressed. She was a very attractive woman and very formal, aggressively, offensively formal towards us. And Rex introduced me to her and said, "Well, this is Ed. He's been doing these webinars for us, and I'm just showing them around." And then I asked her this, "How long have you worked here?" And she says, "I'm 48, and I started when I was 20."
Wow.
And I said, "You must love this place to stay here so long and work here so long." And then I told her my little line, the persistent residual culture line. And I told her, I said, you and people like you are the ones that hold this company together. The people up in the executive suite, they're just here to extract value from the company and they move on. But you and all your people like you love this company, and this is why the company will survive bad leadership.
Mm,
And her response was, and she fell down in her chair. And it was like, for the first time, someone sees what we all know to be true, but nobody wants to admit it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that company's still in trouble.
yeah. Love is such an obvious choice, and yet we've been taken over by loveless people who don't appear to have the ability to love. It seems to be completely missing from their lexicon. Um, because giving and receiving love is not inhuman. There's nothing more human. Animals do it. It's a
Yeah.
nature thing. And people who love their boss will take less money than people, the people who hate their boss. It's all sorts of things. If you want to make loads of money in your organization, bring in great people to lead your organization. Everyone will love working for them, and they'll work for less money. People have an idiot tax that they charge companies when they work for an idiot.
That's right.
They demand more money because just for the pain working for an idiot, and bad leadership costs so much money. It's a bit like Aaron says, lies are expensive. The truth is free. There is only one
Um,
truth, and it's free. But lies, they cost huge amount of money and resource to maintain these things. And if you want to know how much, well, there's a big bank, a massive bank, and they spend 2 billion a year on compliance and have a team of 5,000 people doing compliance in the organization. Well, they're not compliant then, are they? What they are is doing compliance theatre, and that's really, really expensive. Yeah, 2 billion a year expensive. If they were just compliant, it would be free.
I want to read something to you I posted this morning. And this is a post called "The Power of an Introduction." And this is at the very end. This is a 2,500 word essay, but it's addressing what you're talking about. Um, and I'm really talking about um, how to establish networks of relationships, and that I'm using the podcast, as an example of how you build not a network of relationships, but a network of networks.
Mm.
Um, you cannot build a global network of local networks overnight. It takes time. It requires a context for connection and communication that transcends typical social media. It does not start with your network or a podcast. It begins with deciding to be an authentic person. You may think you are, but you are not the judge. You can't ask people if you are, because if you have to ask to find out, you aren't. You can't finesse people. You can't be all glad-handed and smiley-faced. You can't meet people with a pitch. You can't list all your credentials and all your being a nice guy awards. You have to decide to give up your right to always be right, to be the supreme defender of politically correct opinions, and to be the most important person in the room. You have to decide to give up being small and insignificant, afraid of your own shadow, and never having to invest in anyone. False humility is self importance and easy to see, especially by everyone who's just like you. It's not about leadership titles or credentials or resumes, because no one cares. It isn't about your bank account or your street address, and it isn't even about who you know if you don't know what you need to know. Status doesn't scale networks, introductions do. It is not about being successful. Why? You will be seen as either responsible for the world as it is, or have failed to fix it while you were extracting a good life from the world. Think about having to explain yourself when your success is seen as destructive and predatory. I'm telling you that you can't succeed at the game of appearance and build networks of relationships that become a network of networks. If you live to find value from every moment and every encounter, you have taken the first step across the line to be a person a stranger can immediately trust. The other step across that line of authenticity is to decide that you're going to serve your network. You decide to serve every person you meet. Don't tell me that I'm describing a psychological archetype. No, it's a decision to practice specific behaviors. It's mindset, purpose, and behavior. Now, you now speak honestly, respectfully, and not judgmentally. It doesn't mean you don't have to have an opinion. It means you don't use your critical thinking skills to destroy someone as a demonstration of your superior perspective. You must learn how to watch, listen, reflect, and say something appreciative and affirming. How do I know this? My guests have told me this. Specifically, they have said two things. Wow, I hadn't thought about that. That's really deep. What does this mean? I'm tapping into their world with understanding and insight. You see me, recognize me, acknowledge me, appreciate me, affirm me. Thank you. What does that mean? I'm treating them with dignity, respect, and gratitude. The real test is to do this with someone who shares a different philosophy and social political culture than you. Want to grow your network? Be a better human being. In your relationships with people, don't treat them as the world sees them, as if they don't really matter. Treat them as if they matter more to you than you do to them. My advice is to watch the podcast to see how I learn to talk to people, especially to look for guests who seem to have nothing in common with me. At the end of the day, what you see on the podcast is that I love these people. I care about them and the lives and work that they have. If you can't do that, then you haven't crossed the line to authenticity. This is where we begin. All this, every bit of it, is what leadership should be. Leaders love people. They facilitate their development and access to opportunities, and they thank them for their who they are and their potential for making a difference that matters. If all this seems obscure, read my book. Well,
That's lovely. And I agree with every word, all your sentiments, very much.
So there's
You
another
know,
there's another piece to this that I think is worthy of that is recognizing what you're seeing. You're providing something scientific and technical, and I'm celebrating that. But there's a something else that's cultural, and that's this whole notion that you can lie and lie and lie and create this simulation of of a world that where the lie vanishes and it's this is just a new way of seeing things. And but what it really is a seduction to be socially controlled because you
mm,
lose your own ability to think clearly. You lose your own sense of who you are. You lose your sense of self-understanding, and you lose your freedom to act as an agent of goodness and love. And I separate these two as a culture of simulation and a culture of reality, which is exactly what you're talking about. Sorry to
yeah. Uh,
go on.
no, no, I think you're spot on. And Barbara, my partner, Dr. Barbara Clave, the wonderful Dr. Barbara Clave, saved my life many times. Um, said to me one day, "Where are your feet?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." She said, "Feel your feet." And I felt my feet. And then she asked me to describe what I could feel. And she said, "That is called grounding. Before you go into a meeting, before you do anything, find your feet
Yeah.
and describe what it feels like to be touching the earth. And now you're grounded." And it's a wonderful exercise, and it 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 brings us all to the same place, and we all start from the same place because most of us aren't ever grounded. Most of us are dragged off into another world in virtual space where news and um, bombardment of information happens, and our brains are focusing on most of the stuff isn't even real. Um, which reminds me of one of my favorite sayings. An old man once said to me, "The worst thing that ever happened to me never happened to me. I just thought it might." And
Ooh,
that
that is.
that's gone with me. That's gone with me so
Oh,
many times.
oh, that's brilliant. So
Exactly.
here's what I want to say to you. Here's what I want to say to you. I think that what you and your partner are designing or creating is um, is a game changer. And I think it's something which will be very beneficial to a lot of companies. But I think on top of that, the fact that you see how basically the structure of organizations are built around a lie. What we need is a way of structuring work and businesses and governments and communities so that there's not a lie. And I think this is the opportunity. I think there's an opportunity here because there is a vast disquietedness about the way the world functions.
There is, and we have a raft of solutions. We spent 3 months, night and day, 18 hours a day, creating new solutions. And we'd start with an impossible problem and we'd solve it by the end of the day. And we did this again and again and again. We did this for logistics. We've got a logistics solution that you can track your stuff around the world flawlessly. We can do it around a factory. We can do it from an order to a factory, around the factory, and back to the place that's dispatched the order flawlessly, 100% of the time, without AI. Nothing needs AI in what we do. It's all rules based. The thing is, I've learned along the way, the value in a process is not in the steps. That's the lie. The value is in the arrows. Value is created and lost in the arrows, not in the steps. And business have been focusing on the steps and thinking that a machine creates that step. If I can just get a machine to create that step again and again and again and again and again, everything will be great. And it was never the steps. It's always the arrows. Value, this phone, somebody manufactures a phone, that's a step. It's not worth a thing until it ends up with a customer. And that's an arrow. It's moving the phone from where I create it to the customer.
Purpose.
It's the conversation that happened in that space that the person decided to buy that phone. It's decisions, it's human. It's a human experience. And we've always said, the handover, we can just sort out the handovers. Well, yeah, the handover is the interaction. It's not the transaction. It's the interaction between people. And all the value is created in the interaction in a business. And that's why business is religion. It's about beliefs. It's not about data. It's not about numbers. It's not about process steps. It's about interactions between people. And that's based on beliefs. It's not process.
This is so provocative to me. As a minister, raised in the church, believer in God and all that, and when you characterize business as a religion in the way that you have, it's very provocative. And to me, it points to how it can be saved.
Yep. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. But we need to start with people who believe. And the business has been overtaken by people who have no beliefs.
Oh yeah,
and they go and get certified in their lack of belief, right? And they're in scientific methods of management and all of this science getting in the way of truth. Because you don't need science in business. What you need is people. And you need good people who know how to interact with each other. And if you have good people who know how to interact with people, that's trust. And if you've got trust, you've got reliance. And if you've got reliance, you've got grounding, you've got basis. You have a business. Good people will make a good business. What you do then is you bring in an awful person to lead those people and you completely screw it up. And you think this person will drive the performance and they'll drive the numbers. And what happens is they kill it.
Yeah.
They kill a business.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen that so many times. And it breaks your heart because, to me, I'm making a confession of sorts.
Go
on. As I developed my consulting practice, I became less and less interested in working with whoever was in charge, and more interested in working with the people. Because
Mm.
the people are great. I mean, I had a woman who had a small business. She had about five or six employees, and she is the friend of two of my friends, and my two friends said, "Would you work with her? She wants to take a leave of absence from her business so that she can write a book and become a public speaker. She's going to take a year off to go do that. She needs to know whether she can trust her staff." And so I came in and this is the story. So I interviewed all the staff, and some of them I interviewed more than once, and um, and I gave an interim, in the middle of the project, I gave an interim report and my interim invoice, and then I said, okay, I'll have a final report and final invoice for you in a month, and I was prepared for that, and I showed up at our office at like 10:30 in the morning. I think we had a 10:30 meeting. She didn't show up. And I waited an hour. Shouldn't have waited an hour. I said, okay, tell her I'm gone home. I'm only 5 minutes away. So when she comes in, tell her I'll come right over and we'll finish our project. And no word, no phone calls. Called her the next morning. Said I'm free today. I can come over. And then finally the next day I sent her an email with an invoice, and I said, I don't know what you're waiting on, but I'm ready to be done. I have something to say. I won't give it to you until I meet you face to face. And no response at all. 18 months later, 18 months later, I get a text message on my phone. So when do you want to get together? I said, I've already closed the account and the project's done. But what I discovered was that she had a great staff and she didn't ever need to come back to the office ever more because she was the problem in the company.
You know, I'll make a confession now that most of the time I'm brought into an organization, the person bringing me in is the person who has to go
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because they're in trouble because they're
And they know
running
it.
something so badly that they want somebody to come in and sort it out. I've been told. I met a guy once. I won't say what the operation was, but it was an operation. And I said, "What's your biggest problem?" He said, "My people." I said, "Oh, you recruit bad people." He said, "No, no, no, no." I said, "They're all qualified." Yeah, yeah, they're qualified. They're motivated. Yeah, they're motivated. Right? Are they skilled? Yeah, they're skilled. Yeah. So you've got qualified, motivated, skilled people. It's poor management. Then there you go. We're done. Get out. Turn
Yeah.
that finger around. Turn that finger right around. Yeah.
Yeah. I quit.
If
I
you
quit.
can't,
I quit
you
consulting
know.
because I got tired of being lied to.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But I don't mind being lied to. But what bothers me is when the problem is obviously that person
Yeah.
and they're causing harm to people. Um, and I've worked in organizations where I've had people sacked on the spot for that, which has been rewarding. Um, so this is what I tell people who have just taken over in charge, like a new CEO, and they want to make a mark for themselves. So don't do a decentralization or a centralization activity. Don't do that. Find out your worst performing operation somewhere in the business. There's somewhere that's just awful. Go there, get three people who are from the operation, not management, the people who do the work, and put them in a room and say, what gets in the way of you doing a great job? And they'll give you 16 flip chart pages of bile and contempt. And if they're telling you that their manager is awful, so there's your evidence to sack the manager. So what you do is you go and get that manager and you take them to HR and say, I want this person gone. And then you go back to the team and you say, right, just had feedback on the manager. They seem to be an awful person, not good for working with. You guys need to come up with another manager. So I want you to go off to a room and elect your new manager and decide who it is and come back with a name. And they'll come back with a name, and then you say, great, that person's now the manager, and you can mentor them and help them to be a manager. They'll be the best manager in the organization because they have permission to lead.
Yeah.
And their people will have picked the person who is the best manager for them. And that person now will be a great manager. And then the rest of the organization know you're serious. And you can say, that's what I want from management. That's what good looks like.
And when that happens, it's a beautiful thing.
Well,
And
I've done that. And
it
it
becomes
has happened.
legend. It becomes legend.
Exactly
They'll
that.
talk about it
Yeah.
for generations.
Yep, absolutely. And nobody will mess with that leader. They will get exactly what they want because, you have to sacrifice the poor leader because they're not doing any good. They're costing you lots and lots of money. Staff attrition, turnover, sickness,
Yeah.
absence, poor performance, just they bring in people like themselves and they recruit other people like themselves. And it just creates a toxicity through the organization. And you can see it. You can see it spread. And if that person's at the top of the organization, as we got with France Telecom, so I can name them because they actually went to prison.
Wow.
When they took over Orange, the CEO of France Telecom, because France Telecom, I think it was 3G, they ran up the world's biggest debt, and they bought Orange telecoms company as a to just as a cash cow. And the CEO said, I want 20,000 people out of this organization. I don't care if they leave by the roof or the window or the door. And 35 people committed suicide. And they went to prison for it wasn't corporate manslaughter, but I think
Wow.
3 of them went to prison. These are horrible individuals. These
Yeah.
are not well people.
Yeah.
And they end up in charge of companies. So I think that there should be a responsibility for a company to protect people from people with personality disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when that happens, the world will be a better place.
I agree with you.
And maybe some companies need to be sued for the damage that they do to their people by employing people with diagnosable personality disorders to be in charge of people because it's a form of abuse.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our time, and I want to ask you this. Um, how can people get engaged with this perspective that you're developing?
Okay, we have a website called a2zeequal.com. You can contact us on that. There's a little contact us form. It's also got some blurb about what we do. We do a lot more, and we probably should update the website with many more things that we've done. But yeah, we'll always be happy to talk to people. If you want to talk about federation and what it means, and some of the other work that we're doing, we'll always be up for a conversation.
Um, is LinkedIn where you're writing most of the stuff that you're presenting to the public?
No, I tend to write opinions like I've been giving you on LinkedIn. So stuff that people want to argue with, stuff that annoys people. But the A to Z is atozql.com is the website, and that's really where we're starting to present the federation idea and the sorts of solutions that we can create with this.
Okay, sounds great. Send me whatever you'd like in the show notes because this will be picked up by people, and it needs to have something that leads the way, points the way.
I shall try and find. I mean, we have marketing materials, so I'll send you some stuff.
Okay.
and also links to the website.
It's valuable stuff, and I think it's important, and I think you're going to find um, a lot of attention coming to you for this.
Well, we look forward to it because it's very quiet at the moment. It seems that we're a little early. People are still in the throes of clouds and cloud migrations and all that stuff.
Still in the courtship phase with AI.
Yeah, we actually found out that we can build any three-letter acronym in business using this approach. So all of the usual ones, ERP, CPQ, CRM, all of those, we can replace any of those systems with a simple federated solution that won't cost anything. I mean, it's nothing in comparison to what those big SaaS products cost.
And it's so much more efficient.
Well, it's incredibly efficient because it just sits in a browser. There is no infrastructure. There's no, you don't have to worry about security. And all the data stays with you, and all the technology stays inside your own technology. You don't, you're not going online to a SaaS product that's somewhere else. It's inside your own organization. So
That's
it's
great.
perfectly safe.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Ed. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all for watching. I hope this has been intriguing and interesting, and I hope it encourages you to love your business in the right way. And we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye bye.